For almost 39 years, the murder of 20-year-old Melissa Ellison remained unsolved. There was no arrest, no trial, no public explanation for what happened inside her Jacksonville home in December 1987. Only a dead young mother, a 13-month-old child found alive in another room, and a handful of crime scene details investigators kept largely to themselves. Then, on July 8, 2026, a 70-year-old man named Gary Edward Glowacz contacted authorities. According to police, he said he wanted to clear something up about Melissa's death. What happened next changed the case completely. Investigators say Glowacz did not merely claim to remember Melissa. He allegedly admitted breaking into the home. He allegedly described the weapon. He allegedly explained what happened to Melissa's baby. And then he reportedly began describing details inside the bedroom. Details police say had never been released publicly. The location of the weapon, the position of Melissa's body, the mattress, the layout of the home. Details that had been sitting inside investigative files since 1987. Within hours, Glowacz was arrested. But then came another twist. On August 13, 2026, he pleaded not guilty. Police say he confessed. The court record says he denies the charges. So what exactly happened inside that Jacksonville home? Why did this case remain cold for nearly 4 decades? And most importantly, what did Gary Glowacz allegedly know that convinced investigators they were finally speaking to Melissa Ellison's killer? The story begins 3 days after Christmas, December 28, 1987, Jacksonville, Florida. Melissa Ann Ellison was just 20 years old. Friends also knew her as Missy Taylor. She was a young mother. Her daughter was only 13 months old. Sometime during the early morning hours, something happened inside the residence on Coljon Road. At approximately 4:40 a.m., Jacksonville police were called to the home. Melissa's roommates had discovered her baby crying on a sofa in the living room. The child was alive. Melissa was nowhere in sight. When the roommates went into the bedroom, they found her on the bed. She was dead. The scene immediately raised disturbing questions. Why was Melissa in the bedroom while her baby was alone in the living room? Who had moved the child? And what had happened before the roommates woke up? Investigators from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office began documenting the scene. Melissa had suffered severe blunt force injuries. The medical examiner later determined that she died from blunt force trauma to the head. Police found blood on the bedding. Her head was positioned beneath a pillow. Her nightclothes had been pulled upward. Investigators also observed soot or ash on the bed. That detail pointed them toward an unusual possible weapon, a wooden fireplace log. The log was found inside the residence. Police believed it may have been used to strike Melissa. But there was another fact that would become critical decades later. The scene suggested that someone had remained in the house after the attack. The baby had apparently been moved. Melissa's body appeared to have been repositioned, and parts of the bedroom had seemingly been searched. This did not look like someone simply entered, attacked her, and immediately ran. Whoever had been inside may have spent additional time there. Detectives worked the case. They interviewed people. They collected evidence. They documented the bedroom. They preserved photographs and reports. But no arrest followed. Eventually, the investigation went cold. Melissa's daughter grew up. The child found crying on the couch became an adult. Years turned into decades. The house changed. People moved away. Witnesses aged. But the case file remained. And inside that file were details investigators had never needed to publish. That matters because in a cold case, what police do not reveal can be just as important as what they do. Certain facts can be deliberately held back from the public, not because they are unimportant, but because one day, someone may come forward claiming to know what happened. If that person repeats only facts published in newspapers, investigators learn very little. But if that person knows something never made public, the situation changes. That is exactly what Jacksonville detectives say happened in 2026. Nearly 39 years after Melissa's death, Gary Edward Glowacz contacted the Clay County Sheriff's Office. He was now 70 years old. According to the arrest report, he told authorities he wanted to provide information about Melissa Ellison's killing. A deputy began speaking with him. Then the conversation reportedly became far more serious. According to investigators, Glowacz said he had entered Melissa's home in 1987. He allegedly said he had been using drugs at the time. He needed money, and he claimed he broke into the residence intending to steal cash or property he could sell. Cold case detectives from Jacksonville were contacted. Glowacz was then interviewed by investigators. He was advised of his rights. Police say he agreed to continue talking. What he allegedly told them became the foundation of the murder case now filed against him. Glowacz reportedly said he entered the residence through a window. According to police, he did not know Melissa. He described the break-in as a burglary. Inside the home, he allegedly entered a bedroom. There, he saw a woman and a baby. According to the arrest report, Glowacz then left the room, but he did not leave the house. Instead, investigators say he picked up a wooden log from inside the residence. Then he returned to the bedroom. He allegedly struck Melissa once in the head or neck area. One blow. Then something happened that investigators would remember for decades. The baby was moved. According to police, Glowacz said he picked up the child. He carried the baby out of the bedroom. He placed the child on the sofa in the living room. He allegedly positioned pillows around the baby. Then he returned to Melissa's bedroom, not to help her. According to investigators, he returned to continue searching for money. And this is where the alleged confession became much more important. Glowacz reportedly told detectives he pulled Melissa by the legs. He said he lifted a corner of the mattress. He was allegedly looking underneath it for money. Then he described where he left the wooden log. Those may sound like small details. To investigators, they were anything but small, because the detectives interviewing Glowacz had access to the original 1987 crime scene documentation. They knew exactly how Melissa had been found. They knew the condition of the bed. They knew what had been moved. They knew where the log had been located. And according to the arrest report, Glowacz's description matched those details closely. Police also say he accurately described the layout of the residence. That raised an obvious question. Could he have learned all of this somewhere else? Investigators considered that possibility. Glowacz reportedly told them he had read a news article about Melissa's cold case in March 2026. According to police, that article caused him to realize that the woman he remembered from 1987 had died. That claim became part of his explanation for why he contacted authorities decades later. But investigators compared what he allegedly told them with what had actually been published. Their conclusion was important. According to the arrest report, several of the details Glowacz described were not contained in the article, and investigators say they had never been publicly released. That is the point where this case changed from an unusual story into a potentially powerful prosecution. A person can read about an old murder. A person can study photographs. A person can repeat facts from television or newspapers. But according to Jacksonville detectives, Glowacz knew more than that. He allegedly knew where things had been, how Melissa had been moved, what had happened to the baby, and what had been done around the mattress. If those facts truly were never public, prosecutors may argue that the knowledge connects Glowacz directly to the crime scene. But investigators did not stop there. They began examining where Glowacz had been living in 1987. According to the arrest report, law enforcement databases showed that he lived approximately half a mile from Melissa's residence at the time. Half a mile. That alone does not prove murder, but it placed him close to the scene. Then investigators found another piece of history. Glowacz had been arrested in connection with another burglary in the area approximately 18 hours after Melissa was found dead. It was a separate case. It did not involve Melissa, and it does not establish that he killed her. But police now had a suspect who allegedly claimed he had been committing burglaries for drug money in 1987. Historical records showed him connected to another burglary in roughly the same place and time. News 4 Jax also reviewed court records showing later criminal cases involving Glowacz, including drug-related convictions and burglary history. Those cases are separate from Melissa's murder. They cannot prove what happened inside her bedroom, but they provide context investigators will likely examine as they reconstruct his life around that period. Still, one of the strangest questions remains unanswered. Why would a man stay silent for nearly 39 years and then contact police himself? According to investigators, Glowacz said he found an article about Melissa's case in March 2026. He allegedly told detectives that he had not known for certain she had died. After reading the story, he reportedly discussed the case with his wife. Police say he decided he wanted to admit what had happened, but he did not immediately surrender. According to the report, Glowacz said he wanted to spend time with his family first. Months later, he contacted authorities. That explanation is now part of the record. Whether a jury eventually accepts it is another question. because after Glowacz spoke with detectives on July 8th, police did not let him leave as merely a witness. Investigators considered the information strong enough to make an arrest. He was booked into the Duval County Jail. The charges were serious: second-degree murder with a weapon and armed burglary with assault or battery. The arrest report itself lists that Glowacz confessed. For Melissa's family, the arrest came after nearly 4 decades without a suspect facing prosecution. Her daughter had been only 13 months old when Melissa died. She was the baby left on the couch. She grew up without her mother. Now, at last, police were telling the family they believed they had identified the man responsible. But an arrest is only the beginning of a criminal case. It is not a conviction. And on August 13, 2026, the case took another turn. Gary Glowacz pleaded not guilty. That creates a striking contrast. Police say he admitted involvement. Their report says he supplied non-public details. Yet in court, he is contesting the charges. Legally, that is possible. A defendant may make statements during an investigation and later plead not guilty. The defense may challenge the meaning of those statements. They may challenge whether they were accurately recorded. They may argue that memories from nearly 4 decades ago are unreliable. They may question which details were truly secret. They may challenge whether the alleged confession proves every element required for murder. And there may be evidence we have not yet seen. That is why the next stage of this case matters so much. Because prosecutors do not merely have to show that Glowacz knew something about Melissa's death. They must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed the crimes charged. And nearly 39 years creates enormous challenges. What physical evidence still exists? Has it been preserved well enough for modern testing? Is there usable DNA? Are the original photographs complete? Are the original investigators still available to testify? Can prosecutors prove exactly which crime scene details were never released? Can they show Glowacz had no other way to learn them? And how will the defense explain his alleged knowledge of the bedroom? Those questions may determine whether this cold case ends with a conviction or another unresolved chapter. But one fact already makes Melissa Ellison's case extraordinary. For decades, investigators had no arrest. Then the man they now accuse of killing her reportedly contacted law enforcement himself. He allegedly described entering her home. He allegedly described striking her. He allegedly described moving her baby. And according to police, he described secrets from a bedroom frozen in investigative records since 1987. Secrets that investigators say the public did not know. The case had waited 39 years for someone to explain what happened inside that house. Police believe Gary Glowacz finally did. Now the question has changed. It is no longer simply, who killed Melissa Ellison? The question facing the court is harder. Can prosecutors prove that the man who allegedly described the crime in extraordinary detail is the man who actually committed it? Because Gary Glowacz has now pleaded not guilty, and until a jury decides otherwise, he is presumed innocent. For Melissa's family, nearly 4 decades of waiting may finally be approaching an answer. But the final answer will not come from a confession written in a police report. It will have to come in court.